And by professional, I mean discipline, showing up on time, I mean work ethic, training intensity, all of those things.
How do you prepare players mentally for that jump?
I think having those characteristics ultimately will open more doors for opportunities for you. You know, people ask, what do you look for? I love people that are proactive. And what does that mean? People that do things without you having to ask.
In your career, do you think that you've been lucky?
Yeah, absolutely.
You want to be lucky, like work harder?
Yeah, well, I mean, you may get lucky to get a trial at high-level club, but if you're not prepared for that trial, then you're not going to stay there. Exactly.
For you, when you're watching a player and you're watching a video or calling a player to see if they want to come play for you, what makes you sign a player?
And we have that opportunity, we have that interest from an outside club, then I think, why not? Because that's going to help the club be sustainable as well. And now we can reinvest, whether in the academy to produce more players, or we can, go out and actually get a transfer for ourselves that may help us win games and a championship. We want people who are humble. We want people who are hungry, proactive, like I said, professional. What we see on Instagram, what we see on the media is the glory.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Select Generation podcast. Super excited about the guest today. So we've got Firmiano Ribeiro, the Executive Academy Director at Miami FC, pro club here in Miami. And Firmiano's got a bit of an interesting experience. So he is growing up in Brazil, Boston. We were actually just talking a little bit off camera. He went to college in New Hampshire. That's where I went at UNH. But he's got a little bit of a different role to guys that we've had on the podcast previously. So previously, episodes have been kind of around like coaches. We've had a couple of agents. We've had some scouts, players. And Firmiano's like the director of one of the academy directors at Miami. So I'm interested to kind of talk to him about his perspective. For you guys, I think you're always asking me, what should I be doing? How do I get better? How do I get looks? So I think this is going to be an interesting perspective to hear from the director, like what they're looking for, how they operate their academy, how they find success. And yeah, I'm really excited to kind of just hear the episode today, his perspective. And, if you guys are thinking about, okay, I want to be hearing from these types of guests, this is information, Sam, that you don't ask these types of questions that we want to know. Shoot me a message, shoot me a DM. If you're a parent, if you're a player and you're wondering, oh, I don't know how this works and I want to know, or that would be cool to hear from this guest about what he thinks about this topic, just let me know. Shoot me a message. Well, yeah, Firmiano, I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming. For someone that's listening to this, that you're trying to explain your story or who you are, who is Firmiano? What's your story? Who are you?
First of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. It's always nice to share your story, and hopefully it inspires some people to or it gives a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of resources for people to pursue their dreams and their careers. I am originally from Brazil, small town called Barreiras in Bahia. Grew up there. Both of my parents are from there. My entire family is from there. I left there when I was about 10 years old. My mother moved to the U.S., and I came along. She got remarried in the U.S. at the time in a city called Fall River, which is just south of Boston, Massachusetts. So I moved with her, experienced the cold for quite some time. In that time, I was back and forth between Brazil, mainly on vacations. My dad lives there. My grandmother lives there. So I was always going back to Brazil. And then when I was 18, I graduated high school, went back to Brazil for a year, just kind of refresh on the culture, spent some time with some family, try to play a bit as well, bounced around in a couple academies there in that time and that year. And then I started to look at what the next step was for me, and that was collegiate football. And at that time, I had some contacts from the time that I was playing here, so I started reaching out to them. Ended up playing at Franklin Pierce University for 2 years, and then transferred to University of Connecticut, where I graduated with my bachelor's 2 years after that. At that time, while I was finishing up college, I started to take an interest in coaching. So I started coaching a bit. Started to really enjoy it. Didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do after college. So, I just was experimenting for a little while, and then I figured that I wanted to continue to pursue a career in football. Whether it was coaching or not, at that time I didn't necessarily know, but I knew that those opportunities were presented to me, so I continued to do that. At that time, I had a friend who was coaching at a small school, which was a junior college called Dean College in Franklin, Massachusetts, also not too far from Boston. And he invited me to go over and just work with him on a college program. At that time, was one of the top junior colleges in the country. And then went really well. It was a new experience for me. At the same time, I also started to work with the New England Revolution Academy over in Foxborough, and that was a great experience. Met some great people, learned a lot. And about a year after into this experience, that friend left for another opportunity, and I ended up becoming the head coach of Dean College, which was a junior college, which is now a Division III school. And it was a really cool experience. A lot of responsibility. I think at the time I was maybe 25, 26, so definitely a lot of responsibility. We ended up doing quite well that year. And at the time I also kept working with the New England Revolution, and then fell in love with my current wife, who was living in Los Angeles at the time. And we did long distance for a while, but after a year, so after a season into my head coaching stint at Dean College, I decided to just leave everything and start over in LA, which was an amazing experience, an amazing city. Lots of good football there as well. Rich football culture. At the time, LAFC had just started, so there was definitely a buzz. There still is a buzz, there. And I had a great experience. I had to start essentially from scratch there. Started coaching recreational soccer after coaching a good level with the New England Revolution Academy and with Dean College. And so that was a bit challenging, but also was a little bit humbling as well, which kind of makes you a little bit stronger for the long run, and from there I started to get involved with some club work. At the time, ended up getting a team, which was the developmental academy, which later kind of transitioned into MLS Next. Worked with some very experienced guys, which was a good learning experience. And at that point, I received an opportunity, or I came across an opportunity that to start working more on the administrative and business role, which was with AYSO, which was a branch of AYSO called AYSO United. AYSO, for those who don't know, was and may still be the biggest youth soccer organization in the country. So I was working out of the corporate office, essentially, helping them develop a Southern California competitive branch. Today, that branch has about 10,000 kids nationwide. So it's a good size club. AYSO Recreational at the time, I don't know today, but at the time, probably had over 100,000 kids nationwide. So it was interesting experience, a different dynamic, different than what I was used to. Obviously in a different city, different culture. So it was really cool. I also learned from a lot of people there as well. It was a great experience introducing me to more of that administrative business side of the game, where I was managing coaches as opposed to coaching myself at the time. Also overseeing the operations of youth clubs, so and helping develop the business side. So it was really cool. After my first year in that role, we had COVID, and being from Brazil, having grown up in the East Coast up north, and my wife is also, grew up in London and has family in Bermuda as well. We felt a bit isolated. Not many people were traveling at the time, and we had just had 2 kids. So it was challenging being there, and we made the decision to just kind of start over and come to South Florida, where a place that we felt was what made sense in term geographically. So we are a little bit closer to family, maybe not exactly where our family is, but just a little bit more accessible, because we wanted our kids to grow up near their family at least. So this was 2021. Moved to South Florida again, started over. Took a role with a local youth club. And from there, just continue to go with my experience that I had as a director of coaching at the time at a youth club, and start to have some conversations with Miami FC, where they have, where they introduced me to the ambition and the project that they wanted to have over the next couple of years, which was to actually develop an academy that develops players and promotes them onto the first team. And it's been an amazing experience so far over the past 2 years. I've been there for 3 years, and over the past 2 years, we've been able to bring 8 players to the first team who have signed academy contracts. So it's been remarkable. Now we can't take credit for developing those players, because obviously we've only are in year 3. We're going on to year 4 of this project. But what we do pride ourselves on is opening those doors for local players in the community. And as many people know, Miami is a hotbed for football, and in a country that has a lot of potential, is developing in the right direction, I believe, for the sport. So I think that it's a great time to start doing that and providing those local young players with the opportunities to break into first team football. And obviously I think that the club will be able to benefit a lot from that, as well as the local players. I went on a little bit of a rant there. Sorry, I apologize,
perfect.
but I just wanted to make sure.
Now we have all the context.
Exactly.
Perfect. So your role now, what is your title?
So executive director of the academy.
What does that mean?
I oversee all operations of the academy, the growth of the academy, onboarding players, staff recruitment, budgeting, marketing, the sporting side as well, with support from other staff. We also have, a head of talent ID manager. We have operations director for the academy. We have a technical director for the academy now as well, which kind of each have their own responsibilities. But I oversee that staff. Also, recruit new staff and look for opportunities where we can grow the academy or how we can do things better, essentially. So everything to do with youth and community programs that is related to youth, essentially related to Miami FC, I'm responsible for.
Perfect. I'm really excited for this conversation. So you guys are playing USL Academy, right? That's the...
Correct. So the USL Academy is a U20 league, essentially, right? So our U20, so we have teams on the boys' side, and we're actually starting to go into the girls' side relatively soon, but we have teams from U10 to U20. U20s play in the USL Academy. They also play in the UPSL to supplement their schedule. And then our first team plays in the USL Championship, which is the second tier of football in America.
So for you, in your role, because I want to talk, I know we'll get into players and advice for players and what you're looking for in players and stuff, but I'm interested because I would love, when I graduated from college, I would have been that is my ideal position. I would love to do what you do, working in football, because I feel like based off what you're telling me, we have a similar experience. You graduated and you didn't play, or you tried to maybe play for a little bit, it didn't work out, so you went into coaching, and you still wanted to be involved in football. So you worked in corporate soccer, you worked in coaching, you were director, and now you've ended up in a really good position. And for myself, I wanted to have a position like yours, but I thought it was going to take me, 20 years to get there. How do you stay in football if you don't want to coach, or if you're not good enough to play and you don't want to coach? How can you still be involved in football?
Look, I talk to people about this a lot, right? And we have some interns that work with us now, and they're trying to figure out how to get into the market. Now, within football, it's important to understand that there's many different paths and careers that you can take, right? You can obviously be a player, you can be a coach, you can be in marketing, you can be the finance manager for a football club, you can be an academy director, you can be a sporting director, you can be, there's many different, an agent, there's many different things that you can do within football. I think the first step is always trying to, and it's hard because I didn't know initially, as I've mentioned earlier, I started off by coaching. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to be in football. So over time, I figured out that this is kind of the path that I want to take. So I think that's always the first step, is figure out what path you want to take, and then you start to build that path and follow the footsteps. It's a very competitive market because obviously there's a lot of football fans across the world that would love to be in football. So most of the people that I know that have been able to grow quickly, they've started out by volunteering or an internship, but not treating it like a volunteering position or an internship position. Essentially, they put in almost full-time hours for the first at least half of a year or a year before they can start getting paid. That happens very, very often. That happened to me actually as well. So in the people who are able to navigate quickly, that's what I would recommend doing, and take that as an education, take that as a free university in the real world of football, because you're following around, and the more that you're doing, the more that you're learning, right? So I think that that sometimes people that want to be in the industry have a little bit of sense of entitlement, that they want to come in with no experience and already get paid. And realistically, there's a lot of people that would do it for free, essentially. So why would companies, clubs, or organization essentially pay somebody that does not have experience? Now, when you build your experience,
you get paid for it.
Exactly. You become an asset, right? Because now they know that you understand the system. They know you understand the culture of the club. And now, okay, we don't want to lose this person, so we want to compensate him.
Yeah, I think you just hit it. You just hit the nail on the head there. I think because I have this conversation with a lot of my friends too. They're always telling me like, "Oh, Sam, I want to have a job in football. I want to do an agency, or I want to do like ticket sales for this club, or marketing, or I want to be like player relations." And I think you hit it nail. Like the like everyone wants to do that. So like, build your resume, do something for 6 months for free. And then just be proactive, like have opportunities. Like the types of people that want to work in football, from my friends, are ones that have played college soccer. So they have connections. They have like, even if you don't have a resume like corporate or working, you still have a resume through playing. Like you're playing, but at the same time, you need to build your resume in terms of like you need to be an asset for the club. Like what the club can't use you as a player anymore because you're done playing. But how else can they use you? Like, are you good at relationships? Are you good at marketing? Are you good at sales? Like, what are you good at? So, but I think it all boils down to being a good person and building relationships, because I think that when you go into a club, like you could be the kit man on, I don't know, the minimum wage doing whatever. I think some kit men in the USL even work for free, but you could be the kit man and then you do a good job, you build relationships with the players, and then, I don't know, an MLS club comes in and is like, oh, I want that guy because he knows this guy that got transferred to this club and he had a really good relationship. He's going to meet them at the hotel when the players are coming and checking in. He's going to do player relations. He's going to make sure that, you know, you're keeping the team together and building a good culture. So I think that building relationships is so important in football, in life in general, but in football specifically. How do you think, how important are relationships in football?
Extremely important, right? I think relationships get you in the door, but your, I want to say competency is what keeps you there, right? And your work ethic and your professionalism and your integrity, I think those are things that keep you in places and help you grow. Your relationships opens the door, right? But to your point before, actually, you know, you mentioned Kitman and it just rang a bell. So actually the Kitman who was at Miami FC for the first team when I first got there, you know, after a year or two, he left and went to a different club, and also as a kit manager. And then now he's a director of operations there, you know, so
thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So it's, you know, that's
I needed an example, but I didn't have one. But
no, that's a perfect example. You know, I don't want to name drop, but
yeah.
But he was great as a kit manager for us, you know, and we always knew it was just a matter of him wanting more, learning the operation side, right, paying attention, asking questions, being involved on more than what he was doing day to day. Because if you want more, essentially, you need to learn more, right? So I'm sure that's what he did in his next role, and a year after being the kit manager, he became the director of operations. There's plenty of examples that I can use like that within my own experience, you know, for people that worked with Miami FC or other clubs that I've worked with as well.
You say there, like, you need to be hard work and you need to be determined. For someone that's listening to this that doesn't really know what that means, like, everyone tells them they need to work harder, but how do I work harder? What do I need to work harder on?
Yeah.
To be successful in football, what do I do?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I'm specifically recruiting, you know, people ask, what do you look for? I love people that are proactive, right? And what does that mean? People that do things without you having to ask, right? Because there's only so much time I have in a day. There's only so much time my boss has in a day. So if he has to tell me every single day what I have to do, then he's taking time from somewhere else where he can be improving the club. So for me, I love people who just figure out where they can improve in their area, within their skill set, how they can help the club, and go and do it without having to be told. Now, obviously, sometimes it may be important decisions that they may have to make, that they may come to me and say, hey, what do you think of this? And I love that. You know, I think that they call that managing up, you know, and I think that's such a valuable characteristic. So I think it's using your time efficiently, right? And making yourself an asset by doing those types of things, and I think you'll be okay, and you'll be able to grow, But I also think that you have to want to grow. I also think that everyone who has a career should not be complacent where they're at and continuously look for opportunities to grow. And by that, I mean by learning different things and making themselves an asset.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, because I also agree, like within like the players that I'm talking to and working with, or even like with Select Generation, when we're talking like as a team, like what we're going to do or the future or what we need to improve on, I think proactiveness is the biggest thing that I've found that players have success in. Like, they do things without asking, and it shows that they're interested as well, Like, if you have to tell someone to do something and they get it done, like, okay, but it's annoying to just keep, like, pulling it out of them, getting them to do it. Like, players, for example, sending emails to college coaches. I have to tell you every time like, you should want to do that. You should be like invested in that. Like, that's what's going to give you rewards. Same with like, I don't know, like let's say you're talking to someone about ticket sales and they say, hey Sam, I just came up with a great idea to do like a group package. I'm going to send it out to these people. I'm like, great, that's awesome. I didn't have to tell you that. Like, you've already done it. Or sponsorships. Oh, I've just come up with a new sponsor idea where we're going to give them a free beer or give them, I don't know, a free scarf when they come into the game, like as a sponsorship. Great. I didn't have to tell you about that. You thought of that automatically. That shows that you want to be here, that you're invested, and you could do that as an intern, and then you're going to get promoted really quick. So that's another question. I mean, I know you kind of just answered it, but like,
to add on to that, I think that I lost my train of thought there. Sorry. But just to add on to that, it's okay, I think, to ask the first time when you don't have a lot of experience. I think that's completely fine. That's normal. You don't know what you're doing. But I think once you have to tell a person the same thing consistently, then it becomes like, I could do that now at this point, and it would take less time, because I actually know how to do whatever task that is. So I think the first time it's okay. Hey, what do I need to do here?
Course,
okay, so we have to give a breakdown.
Yeah, you don't want to take them to take the decision, be proactive, and get it wrong, and then you need to fix it the first time.
Correct, exactly. So I think after the first time, now it's just should start to become automatic, and then what else can you learn to add value to the environment that you're in?
How do I prove to you in an interview that I'm proactive?
I mean, I think asking questions, being prepared, right? Coming into it with a solid understanding, or doing your research on whatever club or company I'm working for. So you ask specific questions. It's like, oh, he's already ahead of the curve here. I don't have to tell you everything about the club. It seems like you already know quite a bit about it because you were proactive and you went and did your own research. So I think that's a great way to do that.
Good advice. In your career, do you think that you've been lucky?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's always part of everything, to get these opportunities. For example, at Miami FC, I had no contacts there. It was simply I applied online and I received a phone call, and it was about a 6-month interview period, which I was at that point. I thought that I wasn't going to be a part of their plans, and sure enough, interview after interview, I ended up at Miami FC. But I'm sure that their inbox were flooded with resumes, and somehow mine caught their eye, and from there we went on. But yeah, I think so.
But do you think that was luck, or do you think that was?
I think that was,
you worked hard.
That was both. That was a combination, right? Luck meets opportunity. I do believe that in fortune and good luck, but I do think that you have to be prepared for those lucky moments, because like similar to relationships, I think it can get you in the door. But if I wasn't prepared with my experience and going on to these interviews or even applying myself, then I wouldn't have been able to get lucky, Yeah.
No, I always say, like, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Absolutely.
Like, I think luck is massive, obviously, but I don't really ever meet any lucky, lazy people.
Yeah.
Like, the people that get lucky are the ones that like did a lot to get that luck.
For sure.
Like,
absolutely.
So I always say that to players. Like, you want to be lucky, like, work harder.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you may get lucky to get a trial at a high level club, but if you're not prepared for that trial, then you're not going to stay there. Exactly.
So I want to talk to this because most of the people listening to this podcast are going to be players and parents that want to go to college or they want to go professional. So how involved are you in player recruitment?
For the academy, very involved. For the first team, I support wherever needed.
So let's talk about the academy. For the academy, let's say that first off, how do you source your players?
Source your players, what do you mean by that?
Like, for example, let's say that you have your teams are 3 years old. How did you build your teams?
Okay. So we have various ways of going and identifying players and recruiting players, right? One is through relationships, right? You build relationships in the community, and once clubs start to see that you have you're actually starting to do what you said you were going to do to promote players and give them opportunities to play with the first team, then they start to support you a little bit more, which has happened over time. Initially, because we didn't have that history, it was a tough barrier to break into. Then obviously there's always open tryouts. Open tryouts are very hard, right? Because you're trying to identify hundreds of players potentially in a
massive gap in level.
Exactly. And so then we also started to develop a program called Talent ID clinics. And these essentially we identify through over time. We keep data, we log data in the depth chart of players of different age groups who we think may be a potential or high potential player for us in the future. And then we start to invite them in gradually over time, see what their level is like so they can be fully integrated into the academy in the future. But yeah, and obviously, having coaches from the communities, I think always help because they have obviously a lot of familiarity with high level players of every age group in the community who may be a good fit. So that is always something as well. Players reach out to us, they'll email us. We have players from all over the world that reach out to us.
Really?
Yeah. We have players who have moved here from different countries to play for us. We have players who are from different states who play for us. We have players from different counties that drive 2 hours to train for us. So there's a variety of that, and I wish we had a structure to host those players a little bit more. We're starting to develop that. We're going on that track, but we're not quite there yet in order to house and board players. But yeah, we're starting. I think it also helps that we're in Miami and it's an attractive place to be in. Yeah. And once you start to promote players onto the first team, even more players are attracted to that because they know that, okay, this is a realistic opportunity where my dream can come true.
So for a player that's listening to this, it's like, damn, I didn't know that they had players from everywhere. I want to go and play for that club. What are you looking for? Are you looking for players with a high IQ? Are you looking with players that have a good resume, that have played at a high level? Are you looking for players that just want to work hard? Are you looking for technical players? Does it depend on the age group? Like for you, when you're watching a player and you're watching a video or calling a player to see if they want to come play for you, what makes you sign a player?
Okay, it's a good question. There's a very broad answer to this, but I think obviously considering their age is also very important because obviously the older they are, the closer they are to 18, 20 years old, the less time we're going to have to develop them and integrate them into the first team. We always try to follow the first team model. Over the past couple of years, it's changed quite a bit. So the academy tries to follow, and so we can best prepare players to go and play for our first team, right? And that's everything from culture to playing style to player profile to everything, right? So for us, we definitely prioritize technical players, I would say. But we also like players who are adaptable because, year after year, coaches change within the first team environment. So we want to make sure that a player is able to fit in different systems as well. And we also try to develop that out of players by giving them challenging situations week after week, that they have to adapt, whether it's the surface, whether it's the training session, whether it's the group that they're in, by moving players up or moving players down with different age groups, just to give them different challenges, put them in different environments so they have or they develop adaptability. So that's huge, right? We like players who are professional. There's something that you can build over time, but if we get a player who is 18 years old, who is very talented, but has a very unprofessional mentality, then we're not going to have much time to mold that player into a professional to prepare him to get into the first team. And by professional, I mean discipline. I mean, showing up on time. I mean, work ethic, training intensity, all of those things, right? So for each age group, there's set of characteristics and qualities that we may look for because we are, at the end of the day, looking for players who may one day reach the first team level and then potentially even beyond that go into MLS or go into Europe afterwards, which is what we're chasing right now.
So for you to sign a player, do they have to, let's say that you get sent a gem, like you get sent a video of a guy that's played top level, you're like, wow, I'd love to sign this guy that's like 15, 16 years old. Okay. He can play, he's eligible to play. Does he have to come and train with you for a week, or do you just sign him based on a video? Like,
Well, it depends on the level,
Okay.
and also we'll do our research, right? Like, we'll obviously, if there's video available, we will look for the video. If he's playing at a high level, I'll reach out to, or the staff will reach out to our network to see if we know somebody within that club, so we can get some feedback, not only as a player but as a person as well, which is very important, so he can fit into our culture.
So, because I wanted to touch on that, you were talking about like discipline, hard work, work ethic. You can't really tell that on a video.
Correct.
So before you sign a player, how do you find out if they're the right fit culturally?
Correct. So we reach out. Honestly, we do our due diligence to try to reach out to references first. How did the player come about? If he just emailed us out of the blue, now we're going to look into it. We will bring players for a week or 2 week period just to get to know them, see if they're going to actually fit into their environment, see if their level is actually what we saw on video, for example, right? But oftentimes we may have agents or contacts who will reach out to us and say, hey, I have this player. Okay, what's he like? Okay, can we have the coach's contact information, or his last coach's contact information? So we may be able to reach out to them and get a little bit more of a reference, because it's a big move. It's a big move for a player coming from the outside. He's investing their time and making a big life change, and at 16 you don't have much time to continue to make these changes, so we want to make sure that we give it the best possible chance to get it right.
Yeah, I want to talk about this because there's a lot of players that, for example, they will be playing at their level, they'll think that they're better, they want to get a transfer to Miami FC, so they halfway through the season they're like, all right, the season I'm going to go and join another team, not just Miami FC, any team. And then they start talking to their coach, like they start throwing tantrums, they don't show up to practice, they're like, I'm going to leave at the end of the season. But what they don't realize is that the club that you're trying to get to, they're going to call your coach and be like, what's he like? What's he like,
I have an example, a perfect example. So we also, we understand and we're realistic with players and parents. We know that not everybody's going to make it to the first team, right? So we support players to go to college as well if they don't get to the first team level for whatever reason. And even while they're in college, we still try to guide, with as much resources as we have, guide some players through their collegiate career, because we know that eventually, if they play at a high enough level, they may even end up on our first team again someday after college. So there is a specific player that is currently at a top junior school, and he calls, he reaches out, he's like, hey, look, I'm not happy here, or junior college, let's say, and he says, I'm not happy here, this is going on, and our advice to him was, make sure you keep a good attitude, because wherever you transfer to next, they are his or your current coach's opinion of you is going to weigh tremendously. So you don't want to burn that bridge. Suck it up, do what you need to do, but keep a good attitude, be a professional, because at the end of the day, he won't have anything bad to say about you. So it ties exactly into what you're saying, because and we will do the same thing once a player's coming from outside the community as well.
Top. And then let's say that you've got a player that's 16, 17, 18, he's breaking into the first team. How is your relationship with the first team? Like, is the first team coach saying, hey, Firmino, I need a right back today, or I need a winger next week, we've got a big game and I've got an injury? How does a player go from the youth team to the first team?
So it's and it's changed over time. We've really developed that bridge to where it's really smooth right now. When I first came in, the academy and the first team didn't necessarily have a great relationship, and we've broke some of those barriers, not only through me, but through the U20 coach and the rest of the coaching staff at the academy as well, by developing those relationships. So there's an open line of communication, the door is always open at the first team. So our staff is there weekly, watching first team trainings or going into the first team locker room or the offices, having those conversations. So and there's groups as well that we're with the first team staff where they will reach out and say, hey guys, I have an injury, so I need X player for or X position for a training session, or this guy may get dropped, and then we may have to sign a player from the academy in order to fill, as whether it's a reserve or a starter, but we try to obviously not make that process very fast. We try to do it over time by first introducing players into training sessions, right? Or even if they just go to training, we set him on the bench and he just watches, so he knows what to expect when he is in training, right? And then from training, as he gets used to the level, the speed of play, the physicality, which is obviously very different from youth to the first team, then, okay, now he may be ready to sit on the bench for the first team. Now he watches a couple of games, now he can get a couple of minutes. He gets a couple of minutes, he does well, now he can get a start. And then it goes from there. So it's a gradual process. It's not overnight, so we try to do that. And obviously with the first team doors being open, it's a little bit easier to do so.
So, for players making the jump from youth football to the men's team, what are the biggest challenges they face?
Well, I think the physical aspect is usually a huge factor, right? Because if you have a 16-year-old or 17-year-old, he's not as physically developed as a 27-year-old who has already played in the MLS. So I think adapting to that, speed of play is one. Now, I think the biggest one is usually the psychological standpoint, right? He has to still be confident and know that although he may not be on the same level as these first team players now, he knows that he will be, and he's going to work for it, and he's going to learn quickly because there's only so many opportunities that you're going to get. So I think having that self-confidence and having that little bit of a chip on your shoulder usually works for players, and it helps them stay at that level and eventually even go beyond that level, if that makes sense.
How do you prepare players mentally for that jump?
I think it ties a little bit into what I mentioned a little bit earlier, which is, you do it gradually, right? Because almost always the first time a player goes into training with the first team or goes into a game for the first team, they're very nervous, and you can see it, right? So you give them little bits here and there. So, okay, maybe you train once with the first team this week. Okay, he did okay. Let's have him again next week one more time. Next month, he starts training twice with the first team. Month after that, he's training with the first team only. If he obviously shows that, right? But you also have to speak to the player before the first team session. It's like, look, you're an academy player. You're not on the first team yet. So if these guys ask you to pick up balls, you go pick up balls. You should be the first one in the locker room. You should make an example, right? Sit there, relax. Do not be, if they tell you 7:30, we always tell our academy players this. They tell you 7:30 in the morning to be in the locker room, make sure you're there by 7. Because you want to have what they have. They're already there. They already have the first team players already have their place on the team established. You're trying to get that. So you have to do more than they do.
How this is interesting because I feel like a lot of the youth soccer players, they have a big ego, right? Like I play for Miami FC. Right. I find a lot with MLS Next players, for example, they're like, I play MLS Next, I deserve to play Division 1 soccer. And I feel like for a lot of players, they would get a job with the first team, post on Instagram, look at me training with the first team, post on Snapchat, tell all their friends before they've even been in the locker room yet.
Right.
So what's your advice to players on like managing that? I mean, they probably don't even know they have an ego yet. Right. Like they probably haven't thought about that. But how do you make sure that players stay humble when they're given these opportunities?
It's a tough challenge sometimes, especially for talented players who do get those opportunities, right? But I think it's guidance and conversation. A lot of it will come from home, honestly. Oftentimes you'll see players who have, have their feet on the ground quite often, and then you speak to their parents and you understand why. So, but as coaches, I think it's just having that conversation as well. And once you see a player having a bad attitude in training because, I've trained with the first team and now I'm with the academy, you have to humble them.
How is it when they come back?
Yeah, and it happens quite often, where players come back and sometimes their work ethic is not as much. And not only from the first team to the 20s, but also let's say a player that's with the 20s goes down to play with his own age group because he's 2 years younger than the 20s. He goes down, and sometimes the work ethic's not there, the motivation's not there, and at that point you just have to sit him down, have a conversation, say, look, that's not acceptable. Now we're going to keep you with the 18s to humble you a little bit until you prove yourself again. So you lost that opportunity, and it's better to learn there within our youth structure than it is once you get to the first team, because if you get to the first team and you lose that opportunity, it may never come again. So it's we do have to try to prepare those kids at that aspect as well, not only on the football side.
How important is it as a player to be likable by the coach? Because, for example, there's some players that I work with that I want to help more than others just because they're proactive, they're humble, they ask good questions, and they're not arrogant. So I feel like I want to help you more than another player. So for a player that's listening to this that thinks, my coach hates me, he never plays me, I'm always on the bench, or I score all these goals, but he just never gives me feedback. How important is it to be likable?
It's massive. I think you need to it's such a competitive environment, right? The world of football. So I think you need to get an advantage anywhere that you possibly can, right? There's players who are less talented but have that characteristic, they're personable, or they're professional, like they gain or they're great leaders that get them to the next level because coaches or people in general, directors, want to help that player, right? As you mentioned. So I think you need to get an advantage wherever you can. Now, obviously, if you have a super talented player who has a really good personality, then the sky's the limit, right? And obviously, you need to meet a certain standard even before you get considered for those opportunities. And by standard, I mean standard performance, right? You need to be able to perform. But if I have a guy who's slightly better, but has a bad attitude or is not good around the group, or he doesn't add much from that aspect, and then you have a guy who's just a little bit under him but has leadership qualities, is a good professional, is a good communicator, is around the team, works well, learns well, then that guy, we know or we feel that he's going to have a higher ceiling in the long run anyway, so we're going to go with that player, if that makes sense. So I think having those characteristics ultimately will open more doors for opportunities for you.
Totally agree. Good. And then I know you touched a little bit there on, like, you want to in the future develop players to sell them, to go to MLS or to go to Europe. What's going to be the deciding factor between if you want to keep a player for the first team and if you want to sell a player? Like, how are those conversations going to go?
Well, I think, we're a small club in the U.S. I think the USL is the league that we play in is a perfect platform to develop players. I think ultimately the deciding factor will be the player's age, right? If an interest from the outside as well. We want to open those doors and create those bridges to Europe or to the MLS. And it's happening more and more in this league now, right? But the trend is it's typically players who are 23 and younger. So if we have a player who's has a lot of experience and is performing well in the USL Championship, and we have that opportunity, we have that interest from an outside club, then I think why not? Because that's going to help the club be sustainable as well. And now we can reinvest whether in the academy to produce more players, or we can go out and actually get a transfer for ourselves that may help us win games and a championship.
Yeah. Interesting. So when you're and then what's the difference between promoting a player to the first team and sending a player to college? Like, if a player is getting to you at 17, 16 and they say, Firmino, I'm thinking about, obviously I want to play for the first team, but at the same time I want to get my college degree. What should I do? Am I good enough to play for the first team? Should I focus on college? What's the difference between making the first team instead of going to college?
And that's an interesting question, because I didn't have, before this experience, I didn't really have the knowledge, and there are some really cool benefits in the USL right now for those types of players. And we have, and as a lot of people know, it's getting harder and harder for domestic players to even break into a high level of college soccer, because a lot of coaches that want to win want older players with more experience. So the USL right now has what we call academy contracts, and essentially it's an amateur contracts that make you eligible to play for the first team. So if we have a player, let's say he's a senior in high school, and he wants a good opportunity to go play at a good collegiate program at a high level, and it has happened quite a few times over the past year. And so let's say we integrate him into our first team, but now let's sign an amateur contract instead, so you don't lose college eligibility. But at the same time, he's training, you're developing. We also encourage players to already kickstart their education by taking courses at a local school, like State School FIU or Miami-Dade College, a local school. Start taking some courses there so you don't necessarily fall behind academically as well while you're playing with the first team. Now, not everybody gets this opportunity because they have to be at first team level, right? And then there's going to be a point where they can still play in an amateur contract until they are 21 years old, essentially. And there's going to be a point where the first team may say, okay, he's not ready yet. Maybe it's better that he goes to college, and then we start to work with the player to place him at a good school. But once they have that experience with the first team, a lot of college coaches are very interested in them from all divisions. Now it gives them a more leveled playing field to compete with the players coming from Europe at 21 years old, because they've got men's experience, and they may be 1 or 2 years older than the average college freshman as well. And it's a great opportunity. Or the club may say, hey, we have this opportunity now. We really like you, want to invest in you, and we want to sign you on a professional contract now, because you showed your value, and we have plans for you in the future. And now the player has to decide between that and one or the other. But with that as well, there are scholarship programs that the USL has partnered with universities that you can get a free online education while you're playing for your team as well, if you're an academy contract player that has signed into a professional contract. So there's a lot of benefits there for those types of players, which is something that's not as well known. But I do talk to a lot of players, even the players who are finishing up in MLS Next for an MLS club, for example, and say, look, if you don't have the right opportunity for you, if you have a great opportunity that makes sense for you, you know what you want to do, you know where you want to go, and you have that opportunity, go for it, absolutely. But if you don't know yet, this may be a good a good opportunity to buy you some time, continue your development, and get better opportunities in the future, if that makes sense.
So your U20s are playing USL Academy. What level are the rest of the academy playing at?
So my U20s are playing USL Academy. So they're playing local leagues, essentially, all of those, right? So they're playing local Florida leagues, essentially. Sometimes we have considered playing in more structured and well-known leagues like MLS Next and ECNL even. We have had those discussions. And we are still open to doing that. But there's a variety of factors that play into that as well.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you, do you find it hard to recruit players if you're like, hey, we're Miami FC, we're a pro club, but they're like, yeah, but I want to play MLS Next or ECNL. Do you struggle with that?
Absolutely. Especially at the younger ages. At the older ages, I think players start to understand what we're doing, right? And by older ages, I mean under 16 through under 20. But those U13s through U15s, they're like, oh, well, I want to play for... Okay, so now let's dive into this. What's the purpose of you playing MLS Next? Well, I want to be recruited by college. Well, we have a system in place for that. We have a college recruitment.
Plus, you have
advisor.
a clear pathway to a first team.
To a first team. So we have all of this. Like, oh, I want to get recruited for college, or I want to play professional. Okay, well, there's only two, essentially, at the end of the day. Currently, there's only two professional clubs here in Miami. So if you're staying here, there's really two clubs that can offer that opportunity for you,
And then in terms of like competing with Inter Miami for a player, like let's say he's 18, 19, do you find a lot of competition with Inter Miami?
They're in a different, they're in a different league than us. Essentially, the resources they have is incredible. What they provide their players is incredible. We can't compete with that. We're not at that point. So, essentially, they're always going
You're
to
after a different type of player.
Not necessarily, because there's a lot of talent in Miami. And we've had players who've played for Inter Miami in the past who are now with us. And I think ultimately, at Inter Miami, it's just a little bit more challenging because their first team's level is so much higher, right? They got guys like Messi, Busquets. They got guys who played at all levels of the game. So for a player to break into that is a little bit more difficult than it is for them to break into our first team, for example, and actually get meaningful minutes, which is really important. Now, I think they've done a good job of balancing that out with Ben Kermashis and players and local players, and still giving them minutes despite bringing in a lot of experienced players. But it's still very, very difficult for a player to go from the under 18s or the under 16s at Inter Miami to break into that first team one day, where a lot of the players of that level would have a more realistic opportunity to break into our first team and actually get experience playing in a professional environment, traveling, playing in front of fans. And I think that all contributes to your long-term success.
For sure, absolutely. And then I wanted to talk about like off the pitch in terms of your role when you're looking for like coaches. When you're looking for coaches to come in and coach teams in the academy, are you looking for licenses? Are you looking for resumes? Are you looking for personality in the interview? Like, what makes a good coach to go and coach at Miami FC?
Well, I think it's a little bit of a balance and combination, right? I have been, not only me, but the other directors as well, we have been very selective with the people that we bring in, especially because it's also a pathway to professional football, right? So, or to professional coaching, I should say. For example, the youth under 20s last year finished the year as the interim head coach for the first team, right? So, and now we have a head of talent ID in the academy is also working as an analyst with the first team. So there are those opportunities as well. So we have a lot of demand for coaches to come in and work with us. And with that, we have a basic standard for qualifications, licensing that shows that you're pursuing that you want to grow, right? But we know that not every pro licensed coach is a good coach. We understand that. So now we want to also look at his experience. Okay, what experience, where do you work? And then lastly, but probably the most important one is the type of character that he is. So we try to get to know him as much as possible. We don't just say, oh, this guy has a great resume, let's offer him a position. No, we bring him into the field, right? We ask people within our network, what is he like? How is he to work with? We want people who are humble. We want people who are hungry, proactive, like I said, professional, and good people, who want to have fun, who want to be in a light environment. So those are all things that we take into consideration before bringing somebody on.
Do you work a normal 9 to 5, or what are your hours?
No, I'm blessed to say that every day is different. Every day is different. I do have a lot of flexibility in my schedule. I've been given a lot of autonomy. I've been trusted, and I think I've earned that trust over time as well, to know that, or from my bosses, to know that, okay, whether firm is in front of me or not, I know that he's doing what he needs to do in order to move the academy forward.
Yeah, because I wanted to ask you, because I feel like there's a lot of people that the conversation that we had at the start that was like, I want to work in football because it's, I can just work in the evenings and I can kind of set my own schedule. But from my experience, it's 24/7, it's non-stop. Like, and I'm sure for you too, like, right, on the weekends, yes, you're having games, or in the evenings, but then in the morning, in the afternoon, you're doing like administrative Correct. Work. So like, for someone that's thinking, I want to work in football because it's easy, I have lots of time, what do you say?
Yeah, I wouldn't say you have time. I would say you have flexibility, but you have to be organized in order to be productive with flexibility, right? As you mentioned, my phone rings from 7 o'clock in the morning, or I get messages for work 7 o'clock in the morning all the way till I go to sleep, and even after I go to sleep, so I wake up the next day and I have things going on, and I think having a good mental space is important as well, to know that, okay, I can manage this, and this pressure that comes with it when things go wrong. So it comes with a price. Even though I don't have a 9 to 5, I have to clock in and clock out at 5 p.m. and you can go home and you don't have to worry about work anymore. It's consistently going. But there has to be, I think, at least for me, I have to take time where I'm completely shut off, and as long as I prepare things in advance and I let my staff know, it's like, hey guys, I'm not going to be available for XY days. I'm going to take some days off to clear my head, reset, and then get to it again. But it is quite nice. I prefer it that way. I don't think it's always for everybody. I don't think not everybody operates well with that type of structure, but for me it works.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And then last couple questions for you. First one is about players, because I was talking to Mikey about, like, what are some things that you don't really think about being a pro footballer, right? Like, there's a lot of nice things. Like, I don't know, maybe the guys see, like, young players are thinking, oh, I want to be a pro because I have a really cool Instagram, I get loads of DMs from girls, I have a nice car, I get to play football, I get to play video games. But what happens when you're not scoring? What happens when you have to go to bed at 10 o'clock every night? What happens when you can't go on holiday because you're in the middle of season and you don't know when playoffs are going to come? What are some things that kids don't understand, the negatives of being a pro footballer?
There's a lot of pressure, and you have to be able to deal with that. And it's not something that comes overnight. I think, obviously, I think it's said in a lot of podcasts, YouTubes, former footballers talk about it a little bit. What we see on Instagram, what we see on the media is the glory, right? Oh, this guy's got a cool car. He's got a beautiful wife. He's living the dream. But in order to get there, there were many setbacks. I'll talk about Rafinha, for example. He was always trying. He was playing, essentially in the slums of Brazil until he was 19 years old. And I'm sure there were many days where he wanted to give up, many days where he cried. Even in the first season in Barcelona, how difficult that must have been, all eyes on you, and you're being, labeled as a failure at Barcelona, and then he has to overcome that. And a lot of people crumble and fold, and this is not for me, especially I think in this country, because you have other opportunities like college, or you have other opportunities to do other things and still live a comfortable life, and I think sometimes that actually works against American players, because you have access to a lot more than some other places in the world. So I think that that having that mental strength. And again, and going back to what I said before, that's something that you develop over time going through this, but continue to push forward, and going through setbacks and going through failures. Maybe Real Madrid said you weren't good enough, but doesn't mean you're not good enough for Barcelona. And later you might end up at Real Madrid anyway, just a broad example. But I think having that perseverance, and having those types of qualities help you raise the chances to be successful in the long term.
What is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
The best piece of advice, I've received quite a bit of good advice. I don't have one off the top of my head right now, but my dad is a very spiritual guy, so my dad has always asked me or told me or incentivized me, not only him but other people as well, to continue to do what I wanted to do, and continue to pursue my dreams. And I want to, actually, my wife now, there was a time where I had a lot of pressure with 2 kids, and I didn't have a full-time job in football at the time, living in one of the most expensive cities in the country at the time, and she just pushed me to keep going and said, look, do what your heart is telling you to do, and if football is what you want to do, you're going to figure it out. So I think that was what really pushed me to continue going, because otherwise, without that and without her support, I think that I probably may have not been in football anymore, and I love what I do today. I'm privileged to do what I do. So that's a piece of advice that she gave me, and many other people along the way. It's tough to think of one specifically right now, but without those mentors and people who guide you, I think it would be difficult to get to where I am and where I'm going.
Awesome. And then lastly, considering your success and where you are right now and what you want to do in the future, what do you think has been the reason for your success? Why are you where you are today?
I think being humble enough to, and I try to be, right, and sometimes egos can get in the way of it, but being humble enough to know that there's still a lot more to learn, and a lot more to grow. Always, no matter where you are, whether it's your first coaching session or whether you've just won a national championship, right? And also wanting more, not settling for what you have right now. I love what I do. If I was to do this for the rest of my life, I'd be completely stay in the same role for the rest of my life. I'd be completely okay with it. But why not go for more? Why not? I'm still young. I still have the energy. Why not try to get as far as I can go within a game? And right now I have an impact in an academy. Maybe one day I can have a bigger impact in a club, or maybe one day in the league. Who knows? But I think it's always seeing a bigger picture, dreaming big, even sometimes where it's like, is that even realistic? But I think without that, then you just become complacent. And with complacency, I don't think you move very far.
Perfect advice. Top. Firmino, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Really, really good episode. Guys, hope you enjoyed that. If you have any questions, we'll tag Firm's Instagram. Top episode, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. That was a pleasure.